those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all Nerds International. With the hyphen. Nerds International proudly presents.
We want to take you on a quest for knowledge. One that will take us from ancient medieval fantasy across the far reaches of space to the distant future. To many savage worlds.
Welcome to episode 73 of the Wild Eye Podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to Pinnacle Entertainment Savage Worlds, aimed at beginners and veterans alike. Veterans like this guy, Paris Conte, from the land down under, the land that doesn't actually exist if you're a flat earther. I love that. That's my favorite new thing.
How are you, lads?
Right now, it's just me and it's just you. Just pretend these guys don't exist.
Oh, sorry.
We're just going to hang out for a few minutes. We're going to see what's going on. We're going to cuddle a little bit. I've missed you that much that these guys just fade slowly into the background as we make some sweet podcast love together.
Okay. Awkward.
What's going on, gentlemen? How's everybody doing today?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I've really missed Paris. I'm so glad he's back to bring an extra layer of class back to this podcast. However, you have sort of destroyed that already, Gary. So well done. You always sexualize everything on this podcast. Why'd you have to do that, man?
It's true. Well, no, I'm really excited to have Paris back, man. Paris, I need your help with these two. You know what I'm talking about, right? Let's bring some substance back to this show a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you're selling yourself short. I mean, thank you for the welcome back, but there seems to be enough positive comments out there for everything that you guys do in all the time that I wasn't here. So I guess you're doing something right. So I might add something, but I think you're still going pretty strong.
That's because we're strong believers in censorship and we delete all the negative ones.
Paris, you're like the steak for the show, and we're just the salt and pepper, man. We're just the spice on the steak now that you're back.
All right, enough about this. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about an upcoming game, right? A really bloody good one. A little game called Wiseguys. But before we do that, we're going to be talking about what we've been up to since the last podcast, and we've been playing a couple of our ongoing campaigns. Operation Freak Show. First of all, let's have a little natter about that, because we've been essentially playing superpowered guys in Vietnam, the war, not just the place. So how are you guys enjoying that? You like it, Eric? What's your opinion of that campaign?
I really like it. I mean, it was Uncle Jay, right? He talked us into doing this thing. None of us were really into it before that, but the way he runs it, it's kind of, crazy, and there's some grit in there. Last episode went really like an LSD trip, really, at some point, I think.
Yeah,
so
it got really weird because we started seeing like these people with as we're traveling through, we have to try and save this bloke essentially, and we're traveling through the Vietnam jungles and stuff like this, and we suddenly start seeing people with like antennas and these bug people and stuff like this, and we're going through minefields, and it's really weird, and especially when you add in all these people with the most bizarre superpowers. You got a guy that can control bugs, a guy that can turn into mud. It's very good, extremely weird, but I don't know if you guys played superpowers before, because it's my first time ever using the superpowers companion, and I'm not entirely sold on the premise yet, because one of the things is you don't use PowerPoints, right? And there was something that somebody said, and I don't know if we ever resolved this, but what's to stop you from using all of your powers on one turn?
Well, that's the thing. Some of them are actually in action because you have to roll something, but some of them are just activated. Some of them are about movement.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it was me that brought it up. I'm like, I got all these powers, and some of them I just need to activate them. I don't need to roll for them. Does that count as an action? Can I do all of them at the same time? And that's when, because sometimes it feels like I could be doing my turn for about 5 minutes because I got all these powers that I could be using, and then there's 6 of us playing. So, but I don't think it's slowed down the game. Do you think?
No, I don't think it has. But that was one of the things where I was like, I feel like the only reason I'm not using all my powers all the time is because 2 of them count as actions, but a couple of the other ones, I feel like, for example, my fear one, I can do that whenever I want, and my invisibility, I can do it whenever I want. So why am I not using it every single turn? And I think I might start doing that because it just seems like wasted space to not do it. And that's the one thing, I feel like we are really immensely powerful, and against guys with guns, they're not posing that much of a threat.
Because take my character, Vermin Lord. I control swarms of insects, and I send him ahead to scout and see what's going on, so we can see the danger before we get to it. And I feel like not that it's been cheapened by Uncle Jay, but I think he's made a compromise because it feels like my power would be game breaking. Like we never get jumped on by people because I'd see them coming. But what he's done is like if there was an ambush set up against us, instead of us being surprised, he just puts them on the map. He says, okay, now you guys are being attacked, but we're not surprised by it. So it's kind of a compromise where I don't get the full utility of my power, but at the same time, I don't break his game to the point where, we just know what's going to happen before it happens. Know what I mean?
Yeah, because realistically, what we could do is you could send your scout ahead, I could turn invisible and then backstab every one of them. But
yeah, I think that's why we talked about it before, where superpowers, it seems to be just too crazy to handle as a GM. How do you prepare challenging encounters when you have a party of, superpowered characters like we are? And it's not like we work together to make the invincible team of superpowers. It just turns out that we can pretty much handle anything, except we don't speak Vietnamese. But as it turns out, I can speak Bug, and some of those Bug Vietnamese Cambodian people, I can talk to them too.
Are you fighting any supervillains or superpowered beings on the other side?
Not yet, but I get the impression that something's going to come up, because what we've been doing is we're going to save this dude, right? Rescue this guy. That's our mission, because we're working for the military. And as we've been going through the jungle, things are getting progressively weird because we've met these bug people. So I get the impression that something is going to come up. There's now going to be a paranormal angle to it, and we're probably going to fight something soon. As of yet, we've only been fighting Vietnamese people, and the strongest thing we come up against so far is a rocket launcher, which did blow somebody's arm off. And then we fought. We had to go past a minefield, and when we went past the minefield, I just picked them up telepathically and blew them up several miles away from us.
So, in the game, are you getting any of the impressions of the horrors of war, that your characters are starting to question what they're doing or why they're there?
Nope.
No, not really. I mean, the thing is that my character's backstory is that he was damaged by the horrors of war, and he's insane. I mean, that it was kind of like, so it's not really like that. I guess it's more comic booky type of thing, Yeah. So it's weird. It's very weird, but it is really, really fun. But it's just, I think the challenge is coming, but at the moment we're sort of getting used to the environment, using our superpowers, having fun. Do you know what I mean? But only one character's been incapacitated so far, and it was by a rocket launcher.
Cool. Because one of the things I've always struggled with trying to run superhero games is if you look at the comic books, the the superheroes are pretty much invincible to street level people or normal people. But what makes the stories compelling is actually all the emotional stuff that goes in behind it. The battles are fun, but that's not really what superheroes is about, really. It's about saving the earth at that last second, or oh my God, can I rescue this person, but my aunt's going to die, kind of thing. It's all those sort of choices that superheroes have to make that are all moral choices.
Yeah.
But I see what you're talking about with the powers and that, because one of the groups I got at work want to get into a superpower game using Savage Worlds. And as I was reading it, my first thought was, I don't have enough dice. And I've never thought about that with Savage Worlds before. Like, there just seems to be some powers that you need, like, quite a few D6s or... but when I was really looking at how I was going to run it, I think I'm going to just go back to Suede and make it more street level or more what's within Suede and with the PowerPoints, because I think, as you pointed out, if you're just able to use that power constantly, it can get dull.
Yeah, because we actually did something similar with a product we made, Aliens vs. Rednecks, available now, Drive-Thru RPG.
I haven't heard that quality product for a while.
It's amazing. It really is revolutionary. But with that product, in that we just use the superpowers rules from the book, and each alien has its own power. So one of them can walk up walls, one of them can read minds, and then but they don't feel overpowered, because even though you're actually only going up against normal people, because each one only has one thing that they do differently, and that's their power, kind of thing. And it actually works because it also works doubly, because most of the aliens can't fight at all. They're actually their powers determine their job back on their home planet. So the guy who can walk up walls is a window cleaner, for example.
Nice. When is that getting a Suede revision?
There are no plans at the moment, but we definitely should, because it is the greatest Savage Worlds adventure known to man. But so we probably should. But moving on, we'd also been playing our Gary's new 50 Fathoms campaign. Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it's finally on Twitch and YouTube now at work. Gary figured it out.
Oh, cool.
A little bit. The audio is still messed up, but I think I figured out the audio over the course of the last week. So I just have to bring in the sources from different locations, because the way that my setup works, I'm bringing in my voice twice, but it comes in so fast. I should say without a space between the two of them, that it sounds a little robotic, but it doesn't sound like it's echoing. It's that kind of, but I think I got her figured out. So we're going to play some of that today, which is going to be fun. I got some things set up, and I'm about to lay down smackdown on these losers.
Yeah, because Gary, the plot of this is that we're pirates, we're doing our pirate thing, a gem gets touched, and then suddenly we find ourselves in like a sort of normal modern day world, but all the water's gone, and suddenly water is a commodity. It's really cool, and it's like post-apocalyptic kind of thing, I guess. And then Gary, he's like messaging us on MeWe saying, I'm going to kick your ass this week, guys, and he's showing us the enemy that we're going to face, and we know we've got all of its stats, we know everything that it can do, so we're going up against a giant worm today, I believe. Isn't that right, Gary?
Yes.
See? Spoiler alert. We know what's happening in today's game, because Gary wanted to show off his cool card that he made.
Yeah. How many hours did you spend on making that card, Gary?
So, Harrison, what's new and exciting?
12 hours.
Great,
12 hours he spent, but that was to make the template, wasn't it? And then it actually took you an hour to make the card itself. So now you can make more.
It is. The template took me a combined 12 hours. The first 4 was on a portrait style card that I was making, and then Eric came up with the idea that it would be really cool if you could make it so that he could hang them over the top of his GM screen. So I went from a portrait style. Now I had to start over. So I spent 8 hours creating a template by which you could put art on one side, so the art hangs over and faces your players, but all the stats are on the other side, which is on the GM side. I've also made it so that it's about 4x6, so it's a decent sized card. And the template just allows you to click a couple of buttons, excuse me, and change like all the dice and stuff. So if when you go to stat the thing out, it takes me maybe 10 minutes to make a card with some cool artwork on it. And the premise is they're just like table tents. You just hang them over the top of your GM screen, but they'll be good for conventions or, when I'm actually playing a game in person. I could just set it on the table. Everybody can see what's going on. And the stats on the back of it are huge numbers. And I took a page out of Fantasy Grounds book. You know how Fantasy Grounds, you can just auto click to do the combat and stuff like that. So what I did was, because if you were to read it out of the book, like if you read how, say, the giant worm works, it'll tell you that it has bite and it has like strength plus whatever is its stat, right? So you actually have to read those letters. What I've done is I've turned that into a graphical looking deal at the bottom of its skills. So it'll tell you that it has bite. It's a D8 and it does X amount of, 3D6 damage kind of a thing. So I put 3 6-sided dice images. So you can just quickly glance at it, realize that it has an 8 as a fighting. And if it hits, it's going to do 3d6. I just like the way that it looks. Anyways, they turned out really well.
Paris, have you been playing any Savage Worlds lately? What?
Not personally, just for work. But, so I've got, what have I got running at the moment? I've got 2 fantasy, 1 ETU, and I'm about to start a supers one. Yeah. So yeah, I've been playing a fair bit, but I've actually been mostly teaching. We've hired a new young lady at work, so I'm teaching her how to GM Savage Worlds, and yeah, most of what I've been doing is just research on how to use the new Suede with the program that I've got, and actually just listening to what Gary was talking about with those cards, he's given me a really cool idea. So just so I'm clear, Gary, you've got like it's like one of those table tent deals, and on one side is the picture of whatever it is that you're fighting or dealing with, and on your side is the stats. Is that correct?
Yep.
Man, that's going to speed up a lot of time for me. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Have you got a template for that or something?
Yeah, through GIMP. I'll show you how to work it. I'll put up a video and stuff like that and then you just got to go online, find your own artwork, resize it to a specific size and drag it into place, type in a few things, add some stuff. But this is if you're like, you're not going to sit there and do hundreds of them, right? You're going to do maybe the 3 or 4 monsters that you're actually going to use in play. So I haven't done all the monsters, but I've done Giant Mech, I've done the Crocodile, and I've done something else. I don't remember what the other one is, but yeah, it takes me about maybe 10 minutes to make it. And then I've designed it for my silhouette portraits, which is a cutting machine. So I can cut it out, and then it'll put like dots in the top of it. Do you know what I mean? So that it makes it easily foldable.
Nice.
And it's just a table tent picture on one side.
That's really cool. I noticed that in that Savaged character creator on the online one, that they've got table tents that come out when you create the PCs, or you can add that as part of the PDF. I wonder if they had I haven't been able to look at if they've got something like that for their bestiary, but that would be really, really cool.
They have a NPC one in the character folio. There's a player one, I should say, not an NPC, PC one.
Okay.
So,
and that's awesome.
We are going to move on now, and we're gonna interview our co-host Eric about Wiseguys. But before we do, I've got a new item, right? Because last week, somebody had the gall to tell us that we were not I've not started this off well, but they told us that we're not knowledgeable, right? And I hate being told that I ain't smart, right? Because I'm smart, right? I've got 2 GCSEs, count them, 2, right? And the thing about that is I'm a very smart person. So this is going to be Harrison's Fact Corner, okay? Harrison's Fact Corner. Did you know? No, go on, Paris.
For those of us that don't live in England, what's a GCSE?
It's the qualification you get when you finish secondary school. You're supposed to get 9, but I got 2.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, it didn't really work out. But that's not the point, because this is Harrison's Fact Corner, right? Did you know
Harrison, I have a question for you.
Oh my God.
You said you had 2 of them? Does that mean you graduated twice?
No, it means that I got a C in maths and I got an A in English.
Well, is that for being English?
Yes. Okay, so Harrison's Fact Corner. Right. Did you know there are no Dutch elms left in England?
We all went to
Harrison's Fact Corner.
Wow.
Wow, I'm so glad I came back to that. I would have missed that one.
Man.
So don't you ever tell me I'm not smart again, because that science facts right here on the Wild Die podcast.
You sure showed everybody.
I really did. So don't you ever email again telling me I'm not smart, because I know stuff about things.
Did all the elms go back to Dutchland?
I assume so.
Is that because of Brexit?
What's Netflix?
Brexit. It's the meal that you have before lunch.
Oh no, you're thinking about Bretflix.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Okay. So moving on.
You guys are retarded.
You can't say retarded, Eric. You have to be PC on this show. It's mongoloid. Paris is face palming right now. Okay, so we're gonna now interview Eric about his upcoming Kickstarter for Wiseguys, the gangster setting and toolkit for Savage Worlds. Let's do it. Let's take it to the edge, guys. Eric, give us the lowdown and the skinny before we get into actually asking our questions. In 13 words or less, what is Wiseguys, and why should people go over to the Kickstarter when it is live very soon?
Well, Wiseguys is a setting. No. You said 13 words or less. No, but... So Wiseguys, the guide to organized crime, is in fact a setting, but also a toolkit for to create your campaigns that involves organized crime.
Could it also be a toolkit to help me change the tire on my car?
No, but maybe to steal your car.
All right. It's a little awkward that we have to interview our boss. But yes, we actually did go through this book last night. And the funny part is that's a crappy answer. I just want to say, I went through this book last night and I skimmed through it took me 2 hours of sort of going through the preview of it. And it is a friggin' fantastic book, man. I just want to say congratulations. It is a rare treat to read something that I find so much inspiration from. And as you go through this book, it was like, oh man, I could run this scene, or I could do this, or there's everything just kept popping up into my brain of cool ideas I could have for one shots or adventures inside this thing. I don't think you're doing it enough credit by calling it a setting and a toolkit, although that's really all. What else can you call it, right? It was absolutely fantastic. That said, there were some interesting things right out of the gate. I noticed that the heat mechanic, this new mechanic that you had created that we had played with, is no longer in the book anywhere. Is there a reason that you took that out?
Yeah, a couple reasons. Well, first, I think the playtest helped with this because it sort of didn't come up into play. It was something that was looming over you guys' head. Like I would just threaten you with some heat, but in the end, it was always resolved by whatever task that you were given to remove the heat. So then Sway happened also, where I decided to make heat just a part of the consequences for failing at something. So a critical failure or failing at a dramatic task will bring down heat on your character and your group instead, where it's a bit more loose, where the GM has a bit more say as to when heat is applied and the consequences. Because here's the thing: how do you gauge what the action that the group takes? How do you gauge the impact it's going to have. Because before, well, heat was work like fatigue. So you were investigated, and then you were basically chased by the cops. But okay, you kill someone. How many levels of heat do you have to soak to be clear of that? And then if you rob a bank, how many heat levels is it? Should it be just like one heat level because people soaked and then they don't really suffer any consequences for it? So instead, a robbery or a heist, as it's called in Wiseguys, is a dramatic task. You fail that, you suffer the consequences, which isn't that you die, it's that you come out of the bank and there are a dozen police cars waiting for you with guns drawn, and now what do you do? Now it made a situation interesting. Instead of keeping track and bookkeeping, tiny residues of heat and all that stuff, I just think it ran better, it was smoother, and it was more in line with how Suede plays out now.
That makes sense.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
you mentioned there as well the heists, because that was we when we play tested this on the first time that I played it with you, we did one of the heists, and that to me was one of the really fun new kind of mechanics or ways of interpreting a dramatic task that you added into this. Can you explain the heists and the way that they work? Because I think people will really dig this.
Yeah, that's probably the mechanic that had the most playtesting among several groups that I ran it for. But what happened with the heist is that Suede came out, and it explicitly gives you rules to run heists in the core rules with the dramatic task and the quick encounters. And I don't like to reinvent the wheel. I'd rather people use rules that they might be familiar with from the core rules. But I still incorporated some of the things that we did previously. Kind of optional rules, but also just a little bit of tweaks to those rules. So a heist is basically, stealing something from a location or someone from a location. And in this case, you run it as a dramatic task, but with the multiple skill little option there, where the GM will create a heist. You'll say, well, you'll need 2 tokens from the dramatic task to infiltrate the place, so that will be stealth, and then you need to get past the security checkpoint, the cards. That would be thievery or electronics, or both of them, and then whatever other challenges that heist has. But what I did is I created a heist generator that's kind of the leftover from previously, where the GM can create one on the fly by drawing cards, and the cards determine what type of challenge that you have to face.
So with the heist generator, it might be like a cool tool for starting off the characters in a scene. You can generate one quickly, then they can play through it, and it might be like your boss is giving you this mission, you're supposed to hit this casino, there's a package in there that they need, or something like that, or a bank or something like this.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the optional rules for the heist is that instead, because that's something that I've kind of realized talking to you, is that like groups run heists differently. In Harrison's group, your buddies, they like to spend 2 or 3 hours just planning the heist. That's part of the fun for them. But initially, the rules that I had was that you jumped right into the heist, and then you determined with the cards what kind of obstacles you had to face, and then the players would just make up flashback scenes that explain how they were prepared. So let's say in the heist they needed a copy of a key, the key card. And then the GM just says, all right, you're in front of the terminal there. You need to swipe the key. How did you get the key? And then the players would make up what happened, how they got to it. So the optional rule now is that at the beginning of a heist, you can roll a research or persuasion to find information about the heist, and then these give you tokens that you can redeem during the heist to call flashback scenes to fix things that goes wrong. So like I said, the part with the key card, you're in front of it, but you did your research at the beginning, and then you have tokens, heist tokens. So one character can say, I'll spend one heist token to, instead of using my thievery to bypass this terminal, I actually spent yesterday flirting with the guard who has this card, and I swiped it from him. So now you spend a token to use a different skill to bypass the challenge. Does that make sense?
It certainly does. And I thought when we kind of played it out like that, doing the flashback scenes, it made it feel really cinematic and like a heist movie, because it was like everyone was immediately there. We started like in situ, and then we were kind of rolling through. I remember there was like I'd already been to the guy's house, and I was playing an impersonator who could impersonate anyone as long as he's observed them for a long enough time. And then I'd already been to the guy's house, studied his mannerisms, and then I just walked in bold as brass, pretending to be the security guard, and I was just like, "Morning, Dave. Morning, John," and then just walked past the other security guards and went straight into the back. And yeah, it was awesome, and it was just like a little flashback where I'd been scoping the guy out, and it really works, and it leads to this cool thing. So instead of having to spend 2 hours preparing, you can just say, "Hey, I already have prepared," and it really works. And like you say, certain people like to do it other ways, but this is a really, really cool way of getting those things done quickly. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it was to mimic the way they do it in the movies. If you've ever watched a heist in a movie, there's going to be a montage of 2 minutes of a bunch of guys loading crates onto something. You see them build something, or they're practicing a scene or something like that, but you're not really sure what's going on. You don't know what they're doing, and then you jump right into the heist, and then you find out how they prepared as the heist goes on. So that was done to simulate that. But if you want to run it, because really a heist is the same thing as a dungeon crawl.
I guess so. Yeah.
You go through a place and you have to defeat security to get something out of it, in that case treasure. So if you want to run it like a dungeon crawl, you can too, but I give you the options to run it a bit more cinematically. So this is one of the setting rules in Wiseguys that had the most playtesting and the most tinkering with, just to get it right.
So I think one of the really important things about Wiseguys as well is how the hierarchy works in the Mafia. I know this might be something that people are familiar with, but for those that aren't, it sort of included a kind of description of how it works in the book, and also this is really important to the way the game plays. So do you want to give a brief description of kind of how the hierarchy works? Because it's like when you earn money, you need to kick it up and things like this. So do you want to describe that quickly?
Sure. Well, one of the first thing I had to do with this book is research. I did a lot of research, and I went to sources where I felt I could trust them, people that live the life, not just reporters or writers. It was actually undercover FBI agents and former mafia bosses in some case. So in the American mob, which is different from the Sicilian mafia, actually the American mob is called La Cosa Nostra, so this thing of ours. And their structure is similar to the Sicilian mafia, but they have the commission, which is separate entity. But you have the boss, you have the consigliere, that's the advisor, and then you have the underboss that takes care of most of the things. The boss just sits and collects money. And then you have the capo regime, the captains, then the soldiers and associates. The associate is the important part for Wiseguys, because while Wiseguys is about the American mob, most of the force of a family are associates, and associates aren't made guys. They're just people that help them make money, or enforcers, and they don't have to be of Italian heritage at all. In fact, if you look at the movie Goodfella, all three main characters, none of them are made guys. You got Henry Hill, he's half Irish. You've got Jimmy Burke, half Irish also, and then Tommy DeVito, he's Italian, but he's not made yet, and but they still live the life. They still act like gangsters. So this is basically, in a nutshell, the structure of the American mob.
And so, let's say, for example, you're playing an associate, and you earn some money doing criminal activity for the American or the Italian American mafia. Then was it that you need to kick up half of that money to the made men, and then they in turn kick that up to the underboss?
Yeah, it's just to simulate. Savage Worlds doesn't really bother with bookkeeping of money that much. And so what I did is just, half of the money from associates that you earn goes up. But that also includes your lifestyle, it just so that you don't have to pay rent and car payments and that type of thing. So it's half of it. If you're a made man, then it's only a quarter of it that goes up to your captain.
And I felt like actually that was a cool aspect, and it might feel like it's somewhat limiting because you're gonna have less and less money, but obviously you're dealing with somewhat bigger amounts. And in addition to that, it also, when we played it, it felt like it had this cool aspect because at any point if you make money, you're criminals, and people might try to hide what they're making from other people, and if you get found out, that's going to be a big deal. And I feel like it actually leads to these cool role-playing situations. So I really thought that was a cool aspect of the game.
It is a neat aspect. I really liked it. There was some pretty sweet. Somebody won some money at the horse tracks, and they didn't want to kick it up. They just took it, and we had that whole adventure where we went into that apartment building because the money was it. So somebody, I don't remember I think it might have been Sean.
Yeah,
he was like, I just left the money. He was talking to us at this breakfast table or something like that, and he made a comment about where the money was, and Harrison's like, gotta go, and then he takes off. And there was this big chase where everybody was trying to book it to the apartment.
The thing is, I was going to try to be more subtle about it, but as soon as I saw Gary's character walk off, because she was like, I'm just going to go powder my nose, and I thought she was going for the money, so then I immediately was like, right, gotta go, and I booked it into a cab. Sean's character gets into the cab too, and then we killed the cab driver, and oh man, it was crazy. But because he was trying to keep it from the made man in our group, who was Alfonso, I think, and that led to this whole big gunfight. It was so good, and we were chasing each other up the stairs. This chase was crazy because as we were going up the stairs, it was using the old chase rules from Deluxe, and we kept on the positions kept changing, and different people were going ahead. So the way Eric narrated it was that people were stumbling over each other up the stairs, people were falling down, and it was like the most insane scramble to get to the money up the stairs that we've ever seen in our lives. It was awesome. Yeah.
And then the money gets thrown out the window.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. And some idiot downstairs took it and ran into an alley.
I believe that's where Bob the Slob showed up. I think he got shot right after that. Paris, you got something you want to say? I saw you take a breath there.
No, you're since I got in contact with a Jumpstart for Wiseguys, I'm an unashamed fan of this setting, for a couple of reasons. One, from what I've seen, how we've used it at work, which I'll get to in a sec. But really, my first question is, this is, well, actually, I'll start with a statement. This is one of the few books that I've read so far for Savage Worlds that does have a lot of content in it, but it doesn't, I didn't feel my brain leaking out of my ear going through all this information. Like it's detailed, but it shows, it's presented in such a way that it's a good, valuable information without being over the top. And it obviously shows that the author, aka you, have an absolute investment / love for this genre. So can you just tell me like what it was about the mafia or organized crime that made you, that you have such a connection for, that you wanted to put into a game?
So before I answer that question, Eric, I just want to say one thing. We've been talking about something that we, as the three of us, are all very familiar with because we're connected to you, but we really haven't described what Wiseguys is, which is, I think, the first thing. So in a nutshell, Wiseguys is a mafia setting. You play mobsters, and it takes place in the 1980s and 1990s time era. Just so
the 90s in Vegas. Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to interject that so that people have this is what we're talking about.
Well, what I find fascinating about the American mob is that, well, first it's supposed to be a secret brotherhood that everybody knows about, and and it's so you get these guys that are supposed to keep everything under check, and it's supposed to be really secret, but somehow they always mess up. They always mess it up. They spend money when they shouldn't. They commit a crime when they shouldn't. And some of them have big egos. You look at John Gotti of the Gambino family. That was one of the most public figures in the 80s, where, when he was sentenced, people were flipping cars out in the street. People loved him. But at the same time, they're really bad people. And they're loved because they also have good values. They're fathers. They take care of their family. They take care of their neighborhood, which is their redeeming quality. But yeah, they'll just kill you if they have to. They're really bad people. And what I found interesting for an RPG is that, I don't know about you guys, but I remember playing games where you walk into a tavern and one of the NPCs make fun of you, and all of a sudden you start to act like a gangster. You're supposed to be a hero, but how dare you make fun of me? And then you turn into a Joe Pesci clone, and you just stab the guy in the tavern just because he made fun of you. This is typical gangster mafia behavior, and this is why I thought it would make a great RPG, because when you play, it doesn't matter if you're supposed to be lawful good or you're a hero and save the world. Someone makes fun of you, you're not going to take it. Most people don't anyway.
What I find, it's interesting that you say that, because when you play this game, I find actually in terms of role-playing, it is genuinely quite complex, because what you end up having is all these characters that, like you say, are bad people, but they all have some sort of moral code, and they tend to be a lot more complex than characters you'll find in other role-playing games, because, yeah, you'll do that thing if somebody insults you. You can't let that happen in front of all of your friends, otherwise you're going to be seen to be, a mug and things like this. But what happens is that you're a bad person, but you have this moral code, and it's never as simple as things like in a fantasy game where I believe in the letter of the law, or I am a goodly man. It's way more complicated than that. It's like, yeah, things like you're like, yeah, you work for a crime syndicate, but you've got like this like, oh yeah, but I'll never hurt women and children, or things like this, and it's like you have all of these codes, but none of them are. It seems weird when you have this juxtaposition of also being a career criminal, and it's really, really interesting.
Yeah. In the game, I call it redeeming quality. It's part of character creation, where you have to figure out what the redeeming quality is for your character. That can be through hindrances, but it doesn't have to be. If you look at The Sopranos, Tony Soprano goes to visit his mother. you know, religiously, he's going to do that because he cares for her. So it's something that they care for. Now, in this game, it could be that you're an entertainer and you go visit, you know, children suffering from cancer in therapy at the hospital, and you perform magic tricks for them. Or maybe you like to save kittens, you have a shelter, or you have a soup kitchen, or you know, you do something good because there's a part of you that's good. And this is going to irk some players, because some players don't like to have this weakness to their character that the GM can exploit. But this is what makes the game even better, in my opinion. I mean, there's nothing that forces you to take that redeeming quality, but if you do, the experience is going to be a lot better.
Answer me this, Eric. What are some of the new kind of edges and hindrances that you've got in there to support these criminal characters? You got any cool ones?
Plenty, actually. We got 33 new edges and 14 new hindrances. The hindrances are the ones I think they're my favorite, because they're the ones that really encourage role playing. So there's something in the mob where if you let a mobster help you with something, you have to repay that debt. You're never going to repay it. He's never going to consider that debt paid. He's always going to come back to you. Hey, remember that time I lend you money because you needed to pay the rent? Well, it's not. Now it's time to help me. But you've already repaid it like 10 times, but it's like he owes you now. So we have the beholden hindrance that illustrates that at any moment a guy that you did a favor for you will come back to haunt you and say, hey, I need your help with something, or do this for me because I helped you. So that's one I really like. Then you got blacklisted, because in Vegas, there's actually a book where if you're suspected of cheating or to be part of organized crime, you get put on this list, and your face is given to every casino, and you can't enter any gambling establishment. So this could cause problems if someone takes that hindrance, where maybe he needs to disguise himself to enter the casino, or security is going to come in there. How about guilty conscience? You're a criminal, but every time you do something, you regret it, and it drives you crazy. And if you do something particularly bad, he receives the Don, which is the GM in this case, gets a Benny that he can use against your character at any time to represent the guilty conscience that you got.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You got liability. This is one of the hindrances that you can give during play, where your character keeps messing up, leaving evidence behind, leaving witnesses, bring too much heat down on the family. So when you have that at the beginning of a session, every session you draw a card, and if you get a face card, that means that your boss sends a squad of hitmen to take you down. It's gonna happen. Brace for it. You because you drew the card, you know it's gonna happen. So in game, it's like you hear rumors and that type of thing. But yeah, I mean, that's only a small sample. Not even half of them just for the hindrances that really adds to the role play. Couple names here: Trigger Happy. If you've seen Pulp Fiction, that scene where John Travolta's character waves the gun in the back seat and a shot goes off, that's what that is right there. If you've seen Breaking Bad, there's a hindrance called Upstanding Citizen. So you're really bad at being a criminal in this case. You tend to mess up quite a bit. You get a hefty penalty to commit any type of crime. Edges.
It's awesome, dude. Like, just talking about this hindrances is already sparking so many creative ideas in my mind. You know, you're in the middle of you're in the middle of a bank heist, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I want a Benny. I'm going to screw everybody over. And you have this breakdown where you start like crying. You're like, I can't believe I shot Marianne in the face, man. What am I doing here? What am I doing? What's my life become? And, you know, you start freaking out, taking some negatives to your role and stuff. That's friggin' fantastic, man. I'm super stoked.
Like my old character, Bob the Slob, he would have had the liability hindrance. That would have been awesome. Yeah, it's too cool, man. Yeah, cut me off a slice of those edges.
Yeah, well, before I move on to the edges, one of the thing with the design of this game that I wanted to do is, I mean, all of you are familiar with ETU, right? And this is a game that came in where up to that point, most of the Savage World. What's that, Paris?
No, you finish.
Okay. I said, I was just gonna say, bro. One of the things that it made me, well, not realize, but solidify my belief in that Savage Worlds can do more than just high-flying action and the big heroes. Where, in ETU's a bunch of just students, they live their life on the campus and then they do some adventuring at the same time. So that was another inspiration for Wiseguys, because you live in Las Vegas. You have your family or you have your friends. You have your side job that you use, that you have to earn money. But then stuff happens, and characters are so important in an RPG for me. Most of the games you play, and they're fun, but you're just a murder hobo, thousands of miles away from home with no attachment. And with this game and a game like ETU, you live where you adventure, which creates so many interesting circumstances, and the hindrances are there to support that. There's also the interludes that we can talk about later. But edges, the big thing for me with edges were the professional edge, because when you put together a group, everybody wants a role in the group. I think, you know, what am I gonna do? What is my part gonna be about? And so in that case, I mean, you need someone, maybe a gambler. So card shark, where you're better at cheating. What about the cleaner, Mr. Wolf in Pulp Fiction? You're gonna be probably killing people if you play Wiseguys, but do you want to leave evidence behind? Probably not, huh? So you need the cleaner to clean up the crime scene for you and make sure that, and this is one of the instances that, okay, you committed a crime, there's blood all over the place. Now let's run a dramatic task before the cops show up, because the neighbor called the cops, heard the sound. Someone's going to show up, they're going to find evidence, and you guys are going to get nailed. So let's run a dramatic task with the cleaner, and you guys can help scrub, right? You got athletics. You can put some elbow grease in there and scrub the crime scene, take the buddy out. And now if you fail it, you leave evidence behind, or the cops catch you on the way out. If you get it right, you're good. For now, anyway, until maybe the GM decides to be mean later and bring this murder back into place. But so that's what the cleaner is for. Explosive expert. 1976 in Cleveland was the America's bomb capital. In a span of about 6 months, over 30 car bombing took place. And there's a movie, actually, a pretty cool movie about that called Kill the Irishman. And this involved the mob in Cleveland, but also the Irish mob led by Danny Green. So you want some car bombing in there, and the explosive expert is your guy. A fun one, hostage taker. You know, that's one of the tropes in the movies where the bad guy comes out of a heist, a robbery, and holds a hostage to him. If you have this edge, if you get shot, you can spend a penny to get your hostage killed instead of you. And of course, the hostage becomes a shield basically in front of you, right? So that's one of the tropes. Then you got more edges for car chases, like getaway driver, aggressive driver that helps you be better at that. A cool one, kiss of death. So with this one, you can use poison. While the edge gives you a dose of poison on you that you can use, and you've become immune to the effect of that poison, so you can apply it to your lips and kiss your target. And it's basically a touch attack where that target can just suffer from the poison. So there's a lot of grindhouse inspiration, influence, I would say, in this game. And yeah, I mean, smuggler, stuntman, racketeer, friend of mine, to have a bunch of contacts, know a bunch of people above the law. You get arrested, you automatically walk out because you know people and places that will get you released, unless you get caught red-handed with, you know, evidence that can't be refuted. But for the most trivial things, you'll just get released. Henchmen, it's like followers, but you can have it from the start. From season, actually. And when you get it, every rank, you get one new henchman, a follower. And you can upgrade them, too. You can upgrade them with the resilient, so they have one more wound. Or you can upgrade them with the lieutenant, which has a wild die. So if you want your a henchman that's a lawyer, because if you end up in front of the judge, you're going to want one. You can upgrade them with a wild eye, or maybe you want a bodyguard instead, or maybe you just want an accountant. That's a big part of it, too.
Sounds
That's just a sample.
Yeah, all that money that you're making from all these heists, this is how you spend that money as a GM. You get your players in a position where they need to buy themselves out of some trouble, pay off a judge, that kind of thing, and you're going to need a couple $100,000. So, you know, even though you're dealing with large sums of money, this is a really good way because of the, you know, this setting naturally sort of has this built in where you're always getting in trouble and you're always trying to pay people off. So you're always throwing the money out. You know, you walk by that lady in the apartment that just saw, you know, heard the gunshots coming out, and you just stop and stand in front of her, whip out your roll of cash, you know, throw down $2,000 or $3,000 and hand it to this lady. And you're just like, you know, keep her quiet because you don't want to kill, you know, women and children, right? So you just buy her off. You're like, you never saw us. And so, you know, it's a good way to, thanks, Harrison. I felt like that went right in my ear. This takes place in the 80s and 90s. You're playing mobsters in the 80s and 90s.
90s. Just 90s.
Is it just 90s? Okay.
Yeah.
So being that I'm an old man, and I grew up in, you know, I was born in 70, so through the 80s and 90s, I was alive. There's a lot of cool things in this book that you've added that are things that I was familiar with when I was a kid. So I have this sort of innate building of what's going on behind the scenes. What I mean by that is, like, I've seen all the mobster movies. You know what I mean? Like, I know how mobsters work. I've done all this stuff. But it's funny because I have a 17-year-old son. and there's a lot of things that he hasn't seen. Right? Like he's not going to be as familiar, which is not true because I know he is, but there's going to be kids that are 20 now looking to get into playing these games that aren't going to have the background of all of this experience that I've, a lifetime of mobster movies, because there's some good ones, right? But inside your book, there's a whole section, an entire section dedicated to Vegas, how Vegas started, how the mob got there, what they're doing there, why they're there, how they built the casinos. And for me, I don't need to read any of that stuff, but it's cool that you've put it in the book for everybody else to partake in. One of the perks, I think, of doing this genre is that, unlike, let's say, let's take 50 Fathoms, because it's one I'm familiar with. When I'm playing 50 Fathoms with my players, they don't know the backstory. So it's hard for players to react to something I'm saying because they don't want to step on the history of the world. And that is a beautiful thing about playing 90s mobsters, because anybody that's seen a movie already sort of knows the backstory of Vegas and all of that other stuff. And from a GM's perspective, it makes it easy for me because I don't really need to read the backstory, like the world setting. And how that is my deal. There's so many settings, so much reading, that you've eliminated that for me, but incorporated it for people that might not be familiar with it. And then also added that to the fact that anybody can sit down and watch a mob movie and know how to play a mobster. So the role playing in this can just get like phenomenal, because everybody can add stuff to it without actually even sort of realizing that they sort of know the world they're in, without having to, I don't have to explain every step of it. I'm curious to know, I did write a little deal here. Like, this is why I got to this. Like, everyone has seen mobster movies and knows how the mob works. From made men to up and comers to killing and doing jobs, you know the code. You're a tough guy and you take no shit. You got an attitude and a cool name, which is one of the things that you put in the beginning of the book. Wiseguys have the best names, which is, to me, it's one of the appealing parts is making your character's name. You sit down, you're like, yeah, I'm going to be Johnny Two Fingers. And you're like, okay, what's the deal with Two Fingers? Well, I had my other one shot off in a gunfight. Now I only got 2 fingers. So it's kind of cool from that aspect. Vegas 80s mobs or Vegas 90s mobsters, I'm curious to know why you chose the 90s as opposed to, say, like the 30s and 40s in a different era. Like, what was the appeal of this era?
Well, one of the first thing is, like you said, in the 90s, most people that will watch a mobster movie, will be familiar with the era. And most of the gamers nowadays have at least been born in the 90s, right? Almost. But it's safe to say most people are familiar with the 90s, whereas if I would have chosen the 70s or the 50s, which were really the heydays, I would have had to add a lot more information on that era. But what is really interesting about the 90s is that the mob left Vegas in the mid 80s, basically. They were driven out of town, historically. I mean, if you watch the movie Casino, Tony Spilotro, well, he's got a different name in the movie, but there were actual real people. And Lefty Rosenthal, Ace Rothstein in the movie, it's Nicky Santoro, the Joe Pesci character. They messed up. They got too big. They brought down too much heat on the mob, and then the law came in, seized their casinos, sold them to corporations, and now, they're basically out of town. So with the 90s, I got a blank slate to create my own alternate version of Las Vegas. So basically, what would have happened if the mob never left? And in what situation would they be in now? What state would they be in? And this opens the door for new mob bosses to get to Vegas, because historically there were never any bosses in Vegas. They were in Chicago and New York. And when at some point the commission split Vegas and Atlantic City between them. So New York got Atlantic City, and Chicago and the rest got Vegas. But there were no actual bosses in Vegas. But now in the 90s, well, at that point, all the bosses are in jail. They're all in prison. They've been sentenced for lifetime, sometimes 50 years, and these guys were like 80 years old in the 80s. So they all died, and or they're in jail, and there's no leadership, no real leadership back in New York. So this opens the door for your character, you guys, to make a name for yourself in Vegas. The city is ours. We don't have to follow the rules from back home. Or maybe you will. There's a couple surprises in there, but basically, let's become the new bosses in Vegas. So I think it was the best era for that. Plus, I always say that Wiseguys is like if there was a sequel to the movie Casino, but directed by Quentin Tarantino. So you got the 90s there that are very Tarantino, but at the same time, there's a medley of former fashions from previous eras. So the 70s, the way people are dressed and act, it's very 70-esque. It's a 70-esque 90s, I would say.
But as well, like, because you've got the inspiration from the Grindhouse, like a little bit peppered in there, Salt Bay, right? The thing about it is that means that although the game can be taken as seriously as you want, it's got a bit of fun in there too, because a lot of the pre-gens, for example, that come with at least the demo kit, those were associates as opposed to made men, or some of them were, right? And what it did is, I feel like you really had fun with the type of characters that you could be, almost like to demonstrate that you don't just need to be a chubby Italian guy, you know, and you had like a roller derby girl who is like also a mum, you know, and she's balancing her being a mum with in a roller derby with being a criminal, and an Elvis impersonator, black Elvis impersonator, and then you had a woman who does what was it, like a magician's act, but she does it with a snake, and you had all of these really cast of colourful characters and things like this. So I think that it's really cool because, as you say, it's like Quentin Tarantino, but he with the fun aspects of Quentin Tarantino peppered in there. So I think it's really awesome.
The Jumpstart has been an absolutely fantastic thing for me. So one of my young participants at work he finally got the courage up to become a GM or to learn how to be a GM. So I could let him pick any setting he want, and he picked Wiseguys. And so he's read through it and he's GMing it on the day, and I'm in the background being quiet. I'm watching all these guys play, and it's what you were saying about the characters was on point there, because just watching these guys trying to relate to the characters that Eric had created and how they'd end up in this situation was quite fantastic. And there was an awesome scene where I just don't want to give the story away, but there's that awesome chase scene at the start of the story, and there was this huge dialogue between two characters about one wanting to throw the snake at the police, and the lady that owns the snake wouldn't, and that was I was giggling my ass off the whole time. But just as they get to sort of the meat of the story, it just so happens that the head of Gen U walks in, like the CEO, Mike, unannounced, walks in, and now normally when a guy in a business suit walks into anywhere my participants are, they will like clam up. You know, they can't relate to someone in a suit. They'll climb up. They're very quiet. And he walks in and goes, "Hi, what are we doing?" And they're all like massive grins on their faces, start describing how they've got to take care of a rat and proceed to outline this plan about what they're going to do to this rat, where they're going to take the body of this rat, how this is all going to happen. And I'm looking at him, and internally I'm fist pumping, right? Because they're like, yeah, they're talking to someone about what they're doing in a way that I've never, it's very rare to see them communicate like this. But the head of Genu starts giving me this quizzical look, and I'm laughing. Like, I'm trying not to break down in tears of laughter here, because at the end of it, I had to send an email to my boss just saying, look, we had Mike come by. The game was fantastic. Like, the guys were fantastic. This is what they did. They interacted. They engaged with Mike. It was fantastic. But please be aware you may be getting an email of a please explain, because I think he thinks I'm trying to start a criminal cartel here with our participants. I have been searching desperately for another setting that has had as much impact in terms of dealing with social communication or socializing communication, and actually trying to understand empathy, or why people are motivated to do certain things. And yes, this is a game about criminals, but with that redeeming factor and having to look at why people act the way they do or operate what they do, or what motivates them to go and do something. My guys who are on the autism spectrum, they're having to actually sort of analyze human behavior from many different levels, and to see that happen, and to see the characters that they created. And what I love about what they're doing is they're not creating what I would class as stereotypical wise guys. Like, if my friends who'd watched Once Upon a Time in America and The Godfather and Casino, like, they would make characters that are sort of in that vein. But these guys are making characters that are, I don't know, they're very unique, and it's awesome to watch. Apart from the fact that it makes me feel old, because I have to keep explaining what happened in the 90s, or they'd ask me about technology in the 90s, or they'd say, oh, I've got one of these, and go, man, I'm sorry, that didn't exist in the 90s. And I think they think Brontosaurus roamed the 90s, and and we used to pedal our cars to work like Fred Flintstone or something. I'm not sure.
That's the cool thing about the
just
setting.
on that, Eric, awesome setting, man. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the cool thing. Like, you don't have to create the stereotypes, and I think the setting is so good at doing that. And yeah, you can really be anything. I mean, it does have to. I guess it would be better if you hit certain tropes, but as long as you're a criminal and as long as you're in the organization, you could be anything, and it's fantastic like that.
Yeah.
Eric, there's something here that I see that you've got new uses for skills for academics, gambling, and persuasion. Specifically, I wanted to ask about gambling, because we've spoken about this before, about how gambling so rarely comes up in any game. So have you made that more of a focus in this then, considering they're in Vegas?
Yeah, that's one of those funny things where, it comes up sometimes in social media where people are questioning, why use cards? That's so Deadlands. We don't need cards in our games. It's not thematic at all. But it fits so well with Wiseguys, because you're in Vegas. You're going to use poker chips, dice, cards. All the implements are there, and the gambling rules in core works fine. Just that gambling has expanded uses in Wiseguys, because while you can use gambling to know how to run a casino, like the character of Ace Rothstein in Casino, how to run it. You can also use gambling to as a substitute for notice skills to catch cheaters, because you know the tricks, right? So those are the two new uses. I mean, there's a little bit more to that, but just a short version there, where you use that, and then you can gamble against the house also, which is something that the rules don't really deal with in the core rules. It's just for a bunch of guys sitting around a table. So in this case, you can use gambling to put a wager on a horse race or a football game, and get your winnings out of that too.
I guess one of the things we should probably talk about as well, if there's anything else about the game that you want to point out, and then we'll kind of we'll talk about the actual Kickstarter itself and stretch goals, rewards, that kind of thing. But is there anything else that you wanted to mention about Wiseguys, and anything else that you think people should know that makes this game awesome? Setting, I should say.
Well, one of the things we didn't really talked about was the toolkit aspect. So you've got setting rules. We've gone over most of them already. You got the edges. There's a huge bestiary in there, a modern bestiary called the mugshot gallery. So if you want a SWAT team, you want a lawyer, you want, all the denizens that you might expect to find in a game like that, a modern game. You have that, and there's also a section where I suggest other types of campaign. Gary and I were just talking about that last night. I mean, the Mafia in space, why not? Because one of the things that I notice in most source books is that in every fantasy games, for instance, you're going to find a Thieves Guild, but they don't go in depth. All I've ran games with my own Thieves Guild, and all they do is, it's a secret organization. You don't know how it works, but they steal. And that's basically all you know about it. Now, part of my research was to find out how these guys pull off their scams, their rackets. So you get a detailed description of how to be a loan shark. How does that work? A blood loan, a Chinese loan. How do these work? And that's something that you can add to your games for more details. How do you perform a hijacking of a cargo, of a truck? Gary drives a truck. If I want to steal his truck full of expensive ready-mix concrete, how do I do that? Well, chances are it's a diesel truck. If he starts for his lunch, it's not good to stop and restart a diesel engine. So he's going to leave it run, and he's going to go have lunch, and then that's when you jump in and steal his truck. Or you do it by stopping him at a red light and jumping him, and you take his driver's license and you tell him, I know where you live. You don't rat on us. Sorry, I'll just give you $1,000 for your load. And then, all a bunch of little details like that. The labor unions, how they deal with them, how to commit a crime, really. That might get me arrested, actually. So this is all kinds of things that you can actually use to add details to your Thieves Guild in your game, or in your space crime syndicate in your sci-fi game. That's where the value for me comes in, I think, where I wrote this blog a couple weeks ago that says we don't need another setting, and it's true. There's so many settings out there, nobody's going to have time to play them all. But when you add more value to a book, to a setting book like that, where you can use it in other games, I think that's where people want to really look at it, take a good look at it, where you're going to add depth and detail to your own games with this book.
Yeah, even to bring this up into a modern perspective too, that if you just take the premise of this book and the way that this book is set up, and take away the mobster aspect of it and bring it up into, say, like into the 2000s, and now you're an up and coming street gang in a city that you're familiar with, which is your own city. You can use this book and the details in this book and the things in this book to actually create your sort of your own little street gang up and coming kind of a deal. And same thing, you still have these, crazy characters that have real jobs in the real life, but they're trying to make a name for themselves and do different things, which was fantastic. And we talked about the space ones. And like you say, if we were talking about doing this pyramid top to bottom of the who's who in the hierarchy, and just writing your names in as a GM sort of cheat sheet, which I thought was super interesting. I do want to talk about the gun list real quick because it's massive. And in a game where Savage Worlds is just guns do 2d6, I noticed there wasn't very much of that. I was wondering if Scott W. touched this guns list. And I want to tell you that I think it's cool that the guns do different damage, because from playing D&D, every weapon does its own damage. But when you come over to Savage Worlds, you realize it's not really that important. But you've kind of thrown that back into the gear list. Every gun has a different, armor piercing capabilities, or some of them, most of them are 2d6 plus 1, but there's some 2d8s, some 2d10s, there's some long range, there's some snipers, different calibers, all sorts of stuff. Like the gun list and the gear list was actually pretty sweet. I want to talk about that for a quick second. And I just want to say this, it's funny in chapter 5. This is one of my notes. I put chapter 5 is the shit. There has to be over 100 adventure seeds in chapter 5. And ironically, this cracks me up because this is ICRPG layout. Suck it, Trebek. And what I mean by that is you've taken Vegas, you've broken it down into sections. So let's say you take it and you slice it into a pie, 8 districts. You've named each district, and then in the district, you've put memorable places and adventure seeds in each one of them. So there has to be like 100 different. You could go to this place and talk to these guys about trying to buy a car or sell a car. You could go over here and you can heist this from this place. This guy is the baker where you got to take the money, and that money gets trickled up to the mob. And just the layout of it was fantastic. It's super easy to read, this bloody book, man. I was almost in friggin' ecstasy last night reading it. It was that good. I sound like I'm blowing so much smoke up your butt, but I really did enjoy it. I just want to let you know. Anyways,
Thank you.
Weapons, dude. Tell me why so many?
Well, the early phase of development, we found stock art for weapons, and I figure why not just use them and stat them up, give a bit more, because usually when you use weapons, firearms in Savage Worlds, you don't really get artwork with them. So we wanted to make cards that players could get, where you get a picture of what your gun actually looks like. Like Paris pointed out, I mean, all light pistols will deal 2d6 or 2d6 minus 1 damage. There's not a whole lot of variety there. But so, yeah, I did reach out to Scott W. Some of you may know him from the GM podcast. He makes appearances there. He publishes his own book. The guy's a gun nut. He knows his stuff. So instead of spending a year researching a bunch of weapons, I asked him for help, and he gladly did. And so what he did is identified those weapons and also gave me a list of weapons per era that are typical per era. So if you want a shotgun and you want to run a campaign in the 90s, you got the guns that might be likely used by bad guys at that time because they were readily available. Same thing for the 50s. If you want to run a moonshiner campaign in the 30s, then there's a list there. So you just look up the list. This is the type of light pistols you'll find in 1930s. So yeah, just added options there, where because sometimes you look at the guns, I don't know weapons, so I know sometimes I gave a gun to someone by caliber and they're like, really, you're giving me a World War I pistol? we're in the future or something like that, and it just breaks their immersion or something like that. But now to have actual names and even artwork associated with them, I think I think it's going to please people that know weapons, and those that don't know, it gives them more options, at least more names, because you can use the same stats but just give it a different name. Yeah, just more variety there. And then the gazetteer, right? You ask. So, yeah, Vegas broken down into. We're gonna have a nice road map, like a garage, or a gas station road map, and then broken down into all the districts with their locations, and every location has a small. Snippet there where like it's called rumors and story seeds. So that's something that the GM can use, or even if the players read it, they can go on by this. And I said rumors, so that means it doesn't have to be true. It's just ideas for your group to help flesh out Vegas a little bit more. I mean, I did my research about Vegas too. I've been there a few times, but mostly stuck to the tourist areas. But I've asked locals. Where are the bad spots, like Naked City by the Stratosphere, and you got Boulder City, Boulder Highway that got really, really bad. Those are bad neighborhoods. East Vegas, North Vegas, those are bad places usually. And then I just riffed off of that because it's still an alternate setting. If you live in Vegas and you read this, you'll be like, what the hell? That's not my city, but it doesn't matter. It's just about making it a fun place to adventure in.
What the hell is monster cheese?
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
So there's a section in their little mafia lingo, and those mobsters aren't the brightest guys. They're not well educated, so they would twist words a little bit or misspell them in a funny way. So that's one of them. They call it the monster cheese, but it's Munster cheese. You don't go to instead of the jukebox, it's the jukebox, which is kind of offensive. Maybe we shouldn't say that, but that's what they said.
Yeah.
The mercy room instead of the emergency room.
I see.
So if you want to learn to talk like them, then got like a whole page of those.
But the only thing is, it's like, I'm looking down this list, right, and it all makes sense. Like, instead of saying pneumonia, they say ammonia, and pizza instead of pizza. But then you go down to Monster cheese, and it says Munster cheese. But I don't know what either of those are. What's Munster cheese?
You never heard of that type of cheese?
Oh, is it just a type of cheese? No, never in my life.
Yeah, it's a type of cheese.
Cool. I'll get some of that.
I demand that you take the word Jew out of this book, and for one simple reason, and this is a funny story that you guys would get a kick out of. We were talking to somebody one time, and his name was like Aaron, like Pubjewski. And so I'm like, and it was spelt really weird. And so when I phonetically pronounced it, I put in like pub-Jew-ski because it was spelt really weird. And Eric gave me crap for saying the word Jew, and it was racist. And I'm like, but I'm trying to understand how to pronounce the guy's name. And I wasn't saying he was a Jew or something like that. I was like, this is how you pronounce your name. So you better take that word out of that book, mister. I'm just saying.
I will.
Okay, but can we go back to the cheese? Like, does that go on a sandwich? Does it go on pizza? Do you eat it on crackers? Like, what sort of cheese is it?
Yeah, this is the
Inquiring minds
important.
wanna
This
know.
is really important. Come on, Eric.
It's really important.
It's like not soft cheese like brie, but yeah, you can get it in slices. It's kind of cheddar a little bit, kind of. It's hard to describe. Yeah, sandwiches.
So could
That's
you
good cheese.
possibly include a Kickstarter stretch goal where you sort of add a chapter where you detail the cheese?
But just all different cheeses that mafia people would eat.
That would be handy by era. So you got Scott W in, who's like a military weapons dude, right? You could get like a cheese expert in.
A 90s deli and all the things that would be in that deli that made men would go and eat. Because
Gabagool.
Gabagool, yeah.
Already mafia rifting all the ideas that are coming to your head. Let's kick the tires on this automobile and send it down the road. Kickstarter. We got to get to this. We're an hour and 30 minutes, and let's talk about the Kickstarter. When's it going live? How much money am I going to spend? And what are some of the perks? Can I get like a pubic hair bookmark from the author? And what level would I get that at?
Why would you want that? No, March 26th. That's a Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern time. That's when it goes live for 24 days. We've got digital rewards, digital levels, I would say, and then print levels that are going to be fulfilled through drive-through RPG. So it's going to be print on demand, which can ship anywhere in the world, of course. One cool thing I wanted to do is to help out the groups. So we're creating a player's guide, which is basically just a cut down version of the full book that just gives you the parts that you need to create a character. And this you get at any level really for free, and you get a not for free, you have to pledge, but if you get a site license, which allows you to share it with your players. And also at the print level, you get a voucher to print as many copies for your group as you want at print cost. So instead of paying full price for each, if your group has 6 players, well, all right, I'll give you a voucher for 6 players guide that you can print out. Probably going to be around $7 to $9 for a print cost for the player's guide. It's going to be around 70 pages long just for the player's guide. And then, of course, higher tiers, those are the vanity tiers, right? You got consigliere, where we use your name or likeness. So you send us a selfie, and we use either or to make a one of the contacts. So in the book, so it could be the lawyer that launders money for you. It could be the garbage disposal man that can take dead bodies from you. All these kind of little minor personalities, but that are really important because contacts, who you know in this game, is more important than how big your gun is. So those are going to be for that. There's 50 spots for that. Then you got underboss. So you make one of the major personalities. Could be because there are other organized crime in there. There's other crime syndicates, I should say. So you could be the boss of the outlaws, one of the biker gangs, or you could be the sheriff in Clark County, who's. And that's the thing, you don't have to be a good guy because most people are corrupt anyway in there. So they all have a bad streak. And then the last level, the boss level, there's only 6 spots for that. You get to make one of the mafia bosses. Same thing with underboss. You get to make we work with you to make your character, and you get the full body artwork, color artwork commission for your character that you make. And we also send you a poster of your character at the end too. And by the time you're at underboss or boss, you get all the rewards. We've got a bunch of stretch goals. We got the comp package that gives you extra stuff like crossovers. If you're a big fan of Saga of the Goblin Horde, Richard is writing a short crossover called Baking Bad that brings the Mafia to brings Saga of the Goblin Horde to a modern setting with the Mafia, of course. So it's a baker that needs dough.
So that brings up a real quick question, Eric. And with this setting, it all seems to be sort of street level or just at the bottom of the made men row.
Yeah.
Is with this book, will there be potential to role play higher up?
Well, we do have a small sidebar on that. we thought the street level would be the most exciting part of it, because once you get higher up, they do less and less, and then you run into the part where if everybody's a boss, why should they work together anymore? So in the book, they're like I said, there's a small sidebar there that gives you tips to do that, but we're looking at the possibility, if this setting does well, to have, more source books to help out with higher levels of crime there, where, well, I mean, if you look at Saga of the Goblin Horde, you're a goblin boss, you got your underlings, so, there's ways to do that, but we have to keep the focus to street level for this one.
Yeah, you mentioned Atlantic City. That would be like a good next one to do. If you've watched, I can't remember the name of the show with what's his face, with Bucky, the guy from, but it was all about back in the
Boardwalk Empire.
That's the one, yeah. Like you could do that sort of a rip-off where you're doing everything deals with alcohol and prohibition and stuff like that, and run alcohol and whatnot. That would be like a cool, sort of next edition one, or even just take.
Could do that. Chicago, New York, Miami, Havana. That would all make great places. London, even.
Yeah. Peaky Blinders is a cool one too that comes to mind for way back in the day. Chicago, you could do like the pizza mafia with all the cheeses,
or like Lock, Stock, or Snatch.
Yep, that was a big influence on Wiseguys too. Those British gangster movies. I mean, they're awesome too. So
they're so good.
Is there going to be bookmarks in the Kickstarter?
There better not be, Eric.
No bookmarks. NPC cards. There's a deck, the Denizens of Wiseguys, a deck with all the mug shots and all the contacts that you can use. So both the GM can use them as stat cards, but you can also hand out those contact cards to the characters when they meet a contact, or when it becomes one of their contact there. So yeah, a bunch of extras, and if this get funded and then we get moved through the stretch goals, then you have things like maps from Fabled Environments, bundle of one sheets. You got John Goff in there, Carl Kiesler, Robin Bircher, Daryl Hardy. All-star cast, basically. And if you play on Fantasy Grounds, that's one of the stretch goals too. If we reach that, we got someone ready to make the module for Fantasy Grounds. So,
so let me ask you this: a situation, right? What if, let's say for example, because Gary might do this, right? What if he pledges the level where he gets to send you a picture of his face, but he just sends you a picture of his bum?
Then I'll just have to refuse to deny access.
Fair enough. All right. Well, look out for that then. Go on.
A picture of my bum and a picture of my face.
That might work.
That would be a cool name for a gangster. He's Bumface Jones.
I might report you though, but it's all
you
good.
left yourself open on that one, though, Gary. Like, how are we going to tell the difference between the two photos?
Nice, nice.
Burn.
Right, so everyone, get on your computers on the 26th of March and have a look. Have a look for this one, because this is going to be the best Kickstarter since Sliced Kickstarter. And it's going to be amazing. Get on there, get your copy, because, this is going to change the way you think about role-playing games forever.
What about the best game that you were talking about earlier?
Aliens vs. Rednecks.
Yeah.
The thing about that is I think this is actually going to be the one to beat it. I actually think that now. It's the only game that's ever going to do it.
You're going to get knocked off the shelf by Wiseguys, I think.
Listen, it's a good game to be second place to.
Well done, my man. No, I totally agree. I think the versatility of Wiseguys is fantastic. Everybody already knows the setting, so it makes it easy to slide into not only one-shots, but campaigns. This book is full of ideas, places, stuff, gear, things, edges, hindrances. Like, it is chopped full, man. Last night was actually, sadly, the first time that I sat down and actually, like, you know, I spent a couple hours going over the pre-book, like, because I know it's not complete. And by the time I was done, I was like a giddy 3-year-old. I almost couldn't go to sleep last night because I was so excited about all the ideas and things that I could do and I could run. And every game that we've played of Wiseguys playtesting has been fantastic. We have had such good times running Wiseguys playtesting this. So yeah, I'm really excited about this. It's going to be awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Let's wrap this up. So, you know, we didn't have our sort of characteristic sort of, you know, every episode we like to, like, bully Eric. Let's call it what it is. You know, and it didn't really happen this episode. I just feel like something's missing, you know. We were too nice to him.
I know. I know. Look at it.
I had to order you guys to be nice to me this episode, basically.
Yeah, seriously, you had to order them to be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like,
well, there's an ethic, you know, it's ethical a little bit where, you know, I kind of produced this show and told them that this is what we're going to do this time, because I'm like, hey, I need to promote my stuff and I got a show, so might as well do it. And you guys better be nice. You guys better be come prepare and make me look good. No, I just told them make it so that people learn things instead of just making jokes the whole show. And I have to say I'm pleased with you guys. You did good.
Yeah, well, speak for yourself. I've hated this episode because I don't. The only reason I come on here is to make jokes and take the piss out of you, and I haven't had the chance to do that. Savage Worlds who? I don't even care about that game.
Right? But nope, not even a single poutine joke the entire show. Unreal.
And we even talked about cheese.
Yeah.
Right? See the restraint that I had to go through?
And it's great to have you back, Paris. So from now on for about 6 months.
Yeah, I don't know when our daylight saving changes. Should be soon, hopefully.
All right, contact info. What do we got?
Yeah, so if you want to get in contact with us, you can do, because we've got an email address. We managed to get one. It's thewilddie@gmail.com. We're on Facebook, MeWe, YouTube, all of that good stuff at The Wild Die Podcast. And, of course, we're on the Nerds International group on MeWe if you want to come and chat with us, mingle, all of that good stuff. And we're on Twitter at The Wild Die. And of course, if you enjoyed the show, please go and donate on Patreon. Sling us a few bucks, because this is what keeps the go. Yeah, you know, it's this. Yeah, so exactly. So go and do that right now, right? Because that's the level of professionalism that you get from us.
You know, you still sound drunk, right? You still hungover?
Yes.
If we had a couple of more bucks, maybe we could afford a proper show host that doesn't get shittered before every show.
Well, look, it was a special occasion. Okay, it was.
Did you have fun?
Yeah, I did.
It's good.
So thanks.
What was the special occasion?
It was a Friday.
Saturday.
Yep. It was good, man. Yeah, we went to the pub, we got hammered. And now I feel hungover, so I'm going to go and have a shower after this. Haven't even showered, I stink of beer. So, enough about that. Here's the Patreon jingle.
Bitch, Sean, Richard, Uncle Jay, Raz, Pebble, Chalmers, Alan Bray, Conrad, Erasmus, Neubert, Greg, Bruni, Corey Judd, Murder Hobo Show, Ray, Aristia, Rob Tout, Bubbles, Manuel Sams, Matt Stark, Kieran, Mongrel, Steven, Dragon Sport, Wiseguys Kickstarter, 26th of March, go there. Zobvia's Fantasy RPG Maps, Daryl Cartier. I'm not joking, it's on the 26th of March. Get that in your head, go there, invest. Bitch! Frank, Turfler, Junior, Gill, Dashard, Lou and Stride, Jens, Johanheim, John, Peterson, Carl, Keesler, Mr. Stan, Kickstart, Wiseguys. Remy Billado, Digital Dungeon Master, Emmanuel Pax, Sid the Squid, Michael Morrison, Landshark, Scott, Monster Davison, Patrick Greenlaw. Yeah. Yeah.
How much are you looking to get on the Kickstarter, Eric?
Millions.
5,000.
Oh, you'll smash that.
I think you're aiming too low. Go for millions. So,
new patron, Patrick Greenlaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Well done for signing up to the Patreon. You're now part of an exclusive club. Okay.
Yes.
We'll tell you where the
Sweet
clubhouse
justice.
is.
Like I said, great to see you, Paris, and we'll see more of you, hear more of you.
Cool.
This is Eric saying, forget about it.
And this is Harrison saying, I'll take the gabagool.
You're up next, Paris.
Oh, I'm so happy to be back. I don't know what to say. I haven't got any cool things to just, wow.
Oh, this is Gary saying, keep your pants on, keep it fun. Or not, take your pants off. Who cares? Forget about it as well. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, my God.
Worst outro ever.
Italian relatives are rolling over me. Great.
Hey, potato!
The Wild Die Podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by Pinnacle Entertainment Group or official Pinnacle licensees. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of the respected owners. All music and artwork is used with permission of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Wild Die Podcast.